and I touch a little bit on the subject of chuck maintenance. I have to take mine apart and just clean them out. It's been a while since I did it. I know I got chips in this one because the number 2 screw right here is pretty stiff. I'm going to start off with the simplest of the chucks first, which would be a 4-jar independent. Obviously, each jar can be moved independently for the other one, which will allow you to be able to dial a piece in really accurately or do offsets in square pieces. These chuck jaws, unlike a regular 3-jar scroll, are only one set of jaws that are reversible, one set of solid jaws. They don't have top jaws like the buck that you'll see later on. And you'll be able to back this out, flip the jaw around, and you'll have a set of outside clamping jaws. Now, this one here doesn't have a brand name on it. It says, let me see, it says Kalamazoo, Indiana right there. And then it says right here, made in the USA. Now, depending on what type of chuck, they're going to be made up slightly differently, but the basic premise is the same. Is you're going to have some sort of Acme screw in here. Now, depending on, like I said, the make, the screw will be in with the jaws here, or it'll be a full-length screw with keepers. That you'll be, in other words, you'll take the jar out, the screw will stay in place. This one here, the screw is underneath these jaws. You'll see it when I take it out. So let me take these jaws completely out here. And also, just like a 3-jar, you want to make sure everything's kept the same. If you see, your slots are numbered and your jaws are numbered. If they're not, either use a punch to number them or a number stamp and number everything. And when you take them out, if they are the ones that the screws remove, make sure that the same screw goes back into the same slot. So basically I'm going to point number 1 to me, and I'm going to keep my setup just like that. So you can see, there's the screw. It sits into a slot in the jaws. By the way, this is a integral threaded chuck. In other words, it doesn't have a threaded back plate. The thread is part of the chuck itself. So you can see how that's made up there. And you see all the garbage that just came out of there. Right there. So that is how it sits through the slot. If you want to reverse your jaws, all you do is just flip it around. Get that chip out of the way, and right back into the same slot it goes the opposite way. So like I said, if I keep number 1 pointed to me and everything's separated like that, then I know how to put it all back together again. So let's take the rest of it out. Now this is the one that's really stiff. And you can kind of see why it's stiff. You see all the chips and stuff in there, and also in that screw. Okay, so now I have everything all taken out. I don't know if it's going to show up really well, but you can see the threads in here. This is where the chuck rides, on these surfaces here and on the top here. You want to make sure everything's cleaned off of there, and run a brush in and out of there. Use a good old toothbrush, works pretty good. and this is just some solvent, some degreaser. It's actually, I'm pretty sure that's Virginia 10. Basically something that I can get at the supply houses that I go to. It works pretty good. Smells like all hell though. And basically just go through and clean all the garbage out of everything. So let me do that. I'll do that off camera so you don't have to sit here and watch me brushing my chuck out with a toothbrush. And then we'll get back to putting it together and the lube we're going to use. Alright, we're all cleaned up and all dried off. The one good thing about using that particular solvent, it's actually not Virginia 10. It's basically the same thing as that. It's just a generic version. I get it at one of my refrigeration supply houses. It'll evaporate after a while too, so dry off the excess with the towel, blow it out with some compressed air, and that'll dry it off really quick. Alright, so now we're going to touch on lubricants a little bit. Lubricants for chucks is a highly debatable subject. Some people swear by grease, some people swear by oil, some people swear by a dry lube such as graphite. Chuck manufacturers like Bison and things like that recommend grease in their chucks, and their own proprietary brand obviously, which is like $40 a container. I do use grease in my scroll chucks. I'll show you where. It's not throughout the whole thing, it's only in certain spots, and we'll go to that in a minute. But I don't use grease in a 4-jaw chuck because all of this is all open. Grease is just going to be an invitation for chips to stick to and jam in here like nobody's business. So what I use is a light oil that actually has moly additives in it. And what it is, or ends up being, is liquid wrench chain lube. It's thick, but it's not as thick as the Kling brand that I use on the gears, and it's clear. I also have a dry lube by them too, which I'm gonna use. I've never tried this one before. I'm going to try this on the scroll chucks as an experiment and see how this works out. But this I've used on the 4-jaw chucks, and I've used on the 3-jaw chucks on the scrolls, and it worked out pretty good. So I'm going to keep using this on these chucks. You can use whey lube or any thick oil, but the only thing is you want a light coat. Once these things get up to the speed, they're going to sling oil everywhere. You're going to decorate your walls. So you want a light coat of oil. And you'll also want to, when you put these on for the first time, stand to the side of it, unless you feel like throwing away your shirt, and put a shield over the chuck and spin it at its highest speed to sling out whatever's going to sling out. So we're going to put a light coat of oil on this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to decant a little bit of this into a container. So let me grab a container. Okay, got some in a little container, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it in with an acid brush. We got that all nice and coated with a light coat. Start off with number 1. Just number 1. Jaw number 1. Put a light coat on the screw. Light coat on the sliding surfaces of the jaw, and right where the screw rides. And in she goes.
Now this is the jar that was very sticky and prompted me to lubricate this chuck.
I feel much better now. Now this was the one that was really sticky right here. Yeah, that feels much better. It's slightly sticky right in the middle, but honestly I think that's just the way the chuck was built more than anything. And then this one. And there. We're all lubed up. Now the reason why I didn't want to use any kind of grease in this is because you can see, or if I can get some light in there, here's your jaw, and here's that screw that's completely open. So if you put grease in here, it's just going to be like a magnet, and you're going to end up with grind and paste in there sooner than later. So this jaw is all set, or chuck rather is all set. We'll go to one of the scrolls. We'll go to the smaller one first. I actually took a closer look at jaw number 2 there, and there was actually a little burr on the inside of the channel where the jaw rides. So now that I got that off, she spins nice and free. Alright, so now move some stuff aside, and we'll move on to my small chuck. Now this is one with solid jaws. I only have the inside gripping jaws. Let me grab let me just show you the difference here. This is a clapped out union chuck. This has the outside gripping jaws in it only. I don't use this chuck, I just keep it because I can't bring myself to throw it away. I'll throw it away and then I'll find a use for it somewhere. So you can see these jaws here are meant to grip on the outside of a part, and these jaws here are meant to actually grab on the inside of a hollow part or the middle for your regular stock. These ones are what you're going to use for 99% of your stock. So set this aside, and let me grab a wrench. Now your scroll jaw chucks here, obviously they all move the same, with They all move with turning one pinion. They're not independently operated like the 4-jaw. These are also numbered, and you have to be careful with the numbering. These ones here actually didn't have any numbers stamped in them, or I believe they are very, very faint. Yeah. If you look, there's a 3, there's a 2, and there's a 1. But as you notice on the face, you don't have any other corresponding numbers. So what I did is just took a punch, 2 marks for 2, 3 for 3, 1 for 1. Also, what you want to do is index your chuck with punch marks. Where are they here? The chuck is basically 3 parts. You have a back plate, you have the bottom part of the chuck that's going to house your scroll, or your pinion rather, and then the top that's going to house your scroll. So you want to punch and make sure you have them marked in line with each other, because it has to go back the same way. So let's pull off the back plate here. This jaw is, or this chuck is serviceable. I can use it. I don't use it a lot just because I have the bigger one. It does work good for smaller jobs. The only issue with it is that the depending on the size, I get anywhere between 8 and 12 thousandths of run out, which is why I don't usually use it a lot. Now here's the back plate. Here you can see this part right here is the register. That's what aligns your chuck. These holes here do nothing except for sandwich and hold your plate to your chuck. This register right here and this surface here and here are what align your chuck. If you buy a used chuck, put it on your lathe, and you have crazy run out on it, take your back plate off of your chuck, leaving this on the spindle, and indicate this back plate and see if it has any run out. If it does, then your problem is more than likely in your back plate itself, because these are trued up on the specific lathe. Then you'll just take a truing cut here down to the register, and then here on the face. Same amount. So if you take 5 thousandths off of here, take 5 thousandths off of here, that'll true this up to the idiosyncrasies of your lathe, and your chucks will run a lot truer. So these screws here go through the body, and I would sandwich this together. So all these got to come off. We want to separate these two pieces, but you don't want to take a screwdriver and jam and hammer it in here. Otherwise you'll raise a burr when you try to slap it together. What you can do is, usually if you put your chuck key in there, you can sometimes just tap your chuck key. See, I just split apart. Now that we got it pretty separated, usually you could just go in there and, not forcing it, just give it a little. Usually it'll come. I'm not prying against this at all. I'm barely putting any pressure on it. You can see, just using one finger, and it's coming right apart. And there it is. Now this is the part, is your scroll right here. Your pinions engage the teeth in your scroll and move those jaws in and out. And that's pretty much how it works. That's why I left it. Usually I take the jaws out, but that's why I left the jaws in, just to show you. Well, take these out. And now the scroll should, you don't want to use a punch to get the scroll out. You'll make a mark in the scroll, and your jaws will actually hit that. Just give it a little tap and it should pop right out. And there's your scroll. So now the same thing with the other one. This is, if you can see, this is how you your chuck jaws ride in here. And you also see that depending on the jaw, the teeth in the bottom are different. They engage this end of the scroll at a different point to all close in the middle. That's why they're numbered and they have to go back the same way. So I'm going to degrease all this and clean it all up, and then I'll show you the lube I'm going to use and how I'm going to do that. Okay, I have everything all cleaned up now. We're all degreased. So let's talk a little bit about lubricants on the scroll chucks. Now, the scrolls themselves, the actual, zoom in here, the actual part that holds the jaws, I usually do the same thing like I did with the 4-jaw chuck. In other words, decant that chain lube and use an acid brush and brush it into here, and then also on the jaws themselves. And that's the way I lubricate the scroll and the actual jaws. And the only problem with that is the excess oil will sling off, so especially the first time that you turn the chuck on after lubricating it, you want to hold something over it to let the excess oil spray out and turn it at the highest speed just to let it sling out. This time, or at least on this chuck, I'm going to do an experiment. I picked this up today, and it's made by the same people I got the chain lube from. But it's a dry lubricant, and it sprays on wet, and then the carrier evaporates and it leaves a film. Now I've already sprayed the scroll chuck and these jaws, and you can kind of see here I sprayed one part of the chuck completely just so you can see the difference. This is the lubricant itself. This is the film here that it leaves behind. It almost feels like a very fine fine powder, and it's supposed to grind itself into the cracks and crevices in the steel itself and lubricate just like graphite. So I'm going to try it on this chuck, the one that I don't use very often, and see how it works. And if I do like the way it works, I'll use it on the one that I use all the time. But we'll try it on this, and if this doesn't work out, then I can always go back to the regular lube that I've been using and then just spray it in. That's not a big thing. Now, like I said, chuck lubrication is a very, very, let's just say, touchy subject for some people. some people swear by certain lubricants and different things, and chuck manufacturers recommend certain lubricants. Now, I know Bison itself sells their own proprietary grease. It's $40 for a tub, which I think is a little ridiculous. But it's supposed to increase gripping force, especially in power-operated chucks and stuff like that, where it's really, really critical that those jaws close with a good amount of force. And you do want to lubricate the pinion gears and everything with something that's going to stay on there and something that's going to stay a while. Because if you look at the way this sits, pretty much like this, and then this sits on top of it here inside and kind of seals everything together. This part of the chuck is sealed. The only part that's open is the scroll itself. I mean, you'll have little gaps here and there, but you're not going to have enough for a lot of big chunks of swarf and everything to get in there. So I use grease, and what I have here, what I've always used an EP grease, extreme pressure grease, with moly additives. But I found this today, and extreme pressure Molygraph multi-purpose grease. Now this has molybdenum in it, and it also has graphite. So the graphite particles in the grease carrier actually grind themselves into the steel and lubricate. So I'm going to try this in the actual pinion and the pinion gear and the little parts where you put your truck wrench in there. Now, I have in the past, I have used grease in the scroll and the jaws. Some people do that. I've just noticed that it attracts swarf like crazy. And chucks do need to be maintained. I mean, you do every once in a while have to break them apart and clean them out. You don't want to, especially after you do something that's like cast iron or very, very powdery, you kind of want to at least pull the teeth out and blow out the scroll, just because you want them to last a long time. You paid a lot of money on them, and the money came out of your pocket. It didn't come out of a company's pocket. So you do want to take care of your equipment. I have done the grease thing on the scroll, and I mean, it works. I didn't particularly like the way it collected swarf or anything, especially if you're doing a lot of boring. It kind of goes in behind the chuck and in. So I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm gonna try the dry lubricant on this one, see how it works. But I've always used just a little bit of oil on the jaws themselves, and I've always packed grease into here. So let's take a little acid brush, and I mean, you don't need a lot. You just want it on the parts that rub. that into place. Take a look at where your punch marks are. Right here, and you can see that. It's right there. So just make sure those are lined up. You get a piece of wood. Camera might jiggle a little bit. Get that started in place. Sure each one of those is meshed. There you go. It's together.
And just like you would with cardboard nuts or anything else like that, or any kind of bolt pattern, tighten across from each other.
And there you go. So a little bit of grease squeezed out right there. And the rest of it's all in there. Now you can see, here's your scroll. Everything else is sealed underneath it. The only way anything can get in is through that tiny little gap that actually looks bigger than what it is, because that's actually black grease right here. And we're nice and smooth. Might take a few turns to spread that grease film out, everything to seat itself, but now we're nice and smooth turning. This wasn't the smoothest chuck to begin with anyway. So there we go. Alrighty. Now to put our jaws back, let's find number 1. Here's number 1. Find our number 1 punch, which is right there. Now watch the scroll as you turn it. And you'll see right there, see where the scroll ends? Alright, so you want to put jaw number 1. Right in there. Now here's number 2 is right here. Turn the scroll. Actually, you know what? Yeah, that's right. This chuck was mismarked from when I got it. 2 is 3 and 3 is 2. So turn your scroll around until you see it appear again right there. Back it out. Jaw number 2. And then your last one, jaw number 3, right in there. And now, like I said, we're nice and smooth. And we close tight. Alright. To put our back plate back on. Match up our punch marks, which are right here. Right there. Another chuck down.